I was thinking about other examples as well. If it's a PDP acquisition due diligence project, and you're buying 10 wells, and let's say the majority of the purchase price is concentrated in 3 of those 10 wells. It's like, well, let's start there. And if it's on a low bore basis and you're just buying the PDP, then essentially you just need to confirm and verify working interest title inside, well, within that particular well, right? Don't need to worry about leasehold. Don't need to worry about um, conveyances that are outside the well. So I think, in terms of building that run sheet that you mentioned, like you can efficiently take a lot off the board on that run sheet on a section by section basis by kind of, and sometimes it's on the operator too, of properly communicating and conveying what the needs are. But you can take a lot of those instruments off the table and not have to look at them. Go back and look at them after the fact, obviously. But in terms of moving towards closing, that's really what you need. So you're buying 10 wells for $10 million, and $8 million is made up of 3 to 10 wells. So, okay, well, those are the 3 we need to high grade, we need to focus on. That's a very small example because I'm assuming that the due diligence projects you guys are doing now are very large, and they make up multiple counties that have hundreds of wells in them. But I think part of the relationship between operator and land service company is, especially on a due diligence project, is understanding how the value is allocated and broken down as part of that acquisition.
Yeah, we do a lot of due diligence.
It really takes for you guys that you guys can get a clear line of sight on what your objectives and focus will be. Like, here's my tier 1 objective, here's my tier 2 objective, versus, let's broad brush. This is what we're buying, and we need to know what we're going to own in every single lease, wellbore lease, unit leasehold lease, those type of things. I think that that really muddies the water up a lot on your side, I would say.
It does, and we have to get real creative. We do them all different, really. But because you're right, most clients come to us, give us the total package. It's like, I've got 30 days, and really that narrows down to 20 days, which really narrows down to about 18, because I need to get you the defect report, right? We've got at the most 21 working days to get this done, and we've got to get creative. I haven't seen a due diligence over 30 days, and I can't tell you how long, when actually you probably need it. But, to your point, another way to do that is if you've got production and it's holding that unit, and you're wanting to get through a lot, you start looking at revenue and JIB statements and buying production. It's producing, it's held. How much risk is there that something's wrong, and are you willing to take that risk, and assume it?
Right.
So yes, we get extremely creative on the due diligence side, and it takes several conversations usually.
Yeah. And I see, and this is where open line of communication and clarity on the relationship between a land service company operator comes in. Most of these companies, when they're making, especially a PDP acquisition, where they're buying a set of wells, and they're buying it at what the seller is saying that the NRI is. It's like, okay, well, in these 10 wells, the NRI is this, and this. Okay. So not only do you have to confirm the wellbore working interest within those 10 wells, but you have to confirm that they own what they claim that they own in terms of the NRI, which is really a much bigger issue, in my opinion, than the working interest, because that's how you make your money. So, if you've got a base lease that's at an 8, because most of the properties on these due diligence projects, they're legacy properties that are producing for 20 or 30 years, right? So if you got a base lease 30 years ago that's at an 8, and you've got 50 override conveyances that are tied to that well, that's going to, on just one of, let's say, again, a hypothetical 10 wells, one of those 10 wells, that's going to probably take longer than 30 days. And if they're claiming 80s, and, I've seen cases where, the land service comes back like, look, they don't own 80s, they own 71s. Yeah. So
if they've got that many overrides, there is no way they're 80.
Right. Exactly.
These days. But yeah, you're right. It's, everything, all the due diligence projects that we work are completely different every time. And it's actually, and you're making a point, how it's allocated. How are you allocating that value? Yeah. What are you actually buying?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's looking at through the title lens, right, on the confirming mineral ownership, working interest ownership, and NRI. And then you've got another layer on top of that in terms of maybe a legacy PDP acquisition due diligence projects of pref rights, AMIs, could be some squirrely JOAs and have some interesting language that can lead to defects as well. So, and I think a lot of this is, like, let's say on your side, is that having experience actually going through these processes over and over and over again, because uh, every section is different. Every well is different. Every lease is different. So you very rarely see the same scenario over and over and over and over again. So especially dealing with legacy properties, new properties that were drilled in 2017, 18. Okay, base leases in 2014. Okay, you're confirming mineral ownership in a section that's got 4 mineral owners. Perfect. Okay, that's like a dream, right? But hardly it works out.
Yeah, and you make a great point to newer production than older. Older production was a lot of times drilled off a landman mineral ownership report, and nowadays, if you've got new production, you've probably got a title opinion in the last 20 years, which you can base all your title off of and makes it a little bit quicker. But then again, if it's also 20 years old in the stack or the scoop, a lot's happened in 20 years, and it can still take some time digging into that. So,
and that's another thing that is a complexity and a challenge for the broker, is that I was taught that if your file room burns up, you can always go to the courthouse and recreate it. So in a lot of cases, I would say that some private agreement that was consummated by buyer and seller back in the 80s and 90s, there's no memo or affidavit filed of record to memorialize that. So you kind of go, okay, you might get a little reference into it on a working interest conveyance. Like, okay, subject to letter agreement dated January 1, 1983. It's like, okay, don't know what that is.
But we're going to defect it anyway.
Yeah, I mean,
don't know what it is.
Yeah, you don't know. It could have a rofer, it could have a pref right.
We could talk due diligence for about 3 days straight, I think.
I know. Yeah, due diligence is tough.